Hello, everybody. Bob Oxley here, and it's time for tips, topics, issues, and positions. And today we're going to take a look at another topic. We're going to revisit immigration, and there's a number of things, categories falling under immigration, and a number of issues that we want to discuss today. And I have an individual that's returning back to us that is our expert in the area of immigration. He's an immigration lawyer. It's Tyler Todd is back with the TIPS program.
Glad to be back. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
I am so happy. There's so much going on about immigration. I guess a couple of things that are going on that I probably bring us up to date. We talked last time about DACA and expiring, and I don't see any movement toward that. I see a lot of judicial activity, and you being our expert and our attorney. Can you give us, the listeners, an update as to where are we at with this DACA?
Yes, when we spoke last, and I was here and grateful to be back, excited to be here. It's always a good time to be here. They had the Attorney General at the time, right, and that's another topic, maybe for another day, of the rotating cabinet of President Trump. But Attorney General Sessions had terminated DACA, and that was, I believe, September of 17. And they had issued the memorandum that after October of 17, they were no longer going to receive new applications for DACA, nor any renewals. And of course, that elicited a number of lawsuits filed against President Trump and the administration. And so we have, if you recall, we have one lawsuit filed in California. Yes. We had two filed in New York, one in Maryland, and then two out of the District of Columbia,
which you brought up in our last show.
We talked about, right? And then several months later, and those were all lawsuits filed against the administration, alleging that the actions taken by the administration were illegal, arbitrary, and capricious, and they couldn't do that, right? They had to, it violated due process, and there are a number of things that those particular lawsuits alleged that they couldn't do that, and the DACA needed to continue, and it needed to continue accepting new applications and accepting new renewals. So what happened was those particular courts issued preliminary injunctions, and it enabled DACA renewal applications to continue to be submitted.
Okay.
But it did not allow new applications to be filed.
So those are all backlogged now?
They're all. So what's happened is those preliminary injunctions have been issued by those particular courts based on those petitions filed by those particular plaintiffs, and the administration, Department of Justice, they've filed appeals in all of those particular cases, and now we're just waiting for the rulings from those courts to make a decision as to whether DACA will be terminated, whether what the government did was illegal and they couldn't do that. And the government's even actually filed for certiorari up to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
And which is kind of an unprecedented move in some of those cases. And the Supreme Court is waiting to determine whether they're going to accept. They've denied on some, and they're waiting to see whether they're going to accept the others. But interestingly enough, in May, Texas and 6 other states, and then a few others joined on thereafter, filed lawsuits against the government saying that DACA originally was unlawful.
Oh, my gosh.
So we have several lawsuits saying we want DACA to continue and even to expand, and then we also have lawsuits saying we want to terminate DACA entirely.
Oh, my gosh.
So that happened in May, and in fact, that Texas lawsuit, we'll call it the Texas lawsuit, because there were 6 other states and then 3 or 4 others that joined thereafter, that they're going to briefing and oral arguments in January so that's next month, in January of 19.
So is that, when you say a briefing, we're not at the Supreme Court level?
No.
No, I mean, because they have their option. They're going to pick and choose what cases, if any at all.
Correct.
And then once that year's up, it has to start, the process has to start all over again. Is that correct?
So it depends on what the Supreme Court does. Okay. But right now, it's all with the district court and the Court of Appeals level. So the Ninth Circuit, the Fifth Circuit, District of Columbia. I think Texas is the Fifth Circuit, if I recall correctly. it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But one good thing that's happened since all of these filings, the Casa de Maryland case, they issued and granted the preliminary injunction, but they also went one step further and said that the government cannot use any information provided by DACA applicants or their family members for enforcement purposes.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's kind of a big deal, because when DACA was originally rolled out, it was extremely underwhelming. There was a big presumption that a number of people, those eligible, of course, but a number of those people that were eligible would file and seek relief under the DACA program. But the number of people and the percentage was really low, because people were scared that if they submitted an application with their information and the information of their families, that it would be handed over to the government and they would use that information.
Absolutely.
To seek.
I can fully understand that.
Right? And absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So the numbers were really low of the number of applicants originally when it was rolled out. So that's a big deal, because those people that now at least are that are eligible for renewals can renew knowing that the information provided will not be used for enforcement purposes for deportation.
And that ruling was in Maryland?
The Casa, and I'll give it to you.
Okay.
It's the Casa de Maryland et al. Versus Department of Homeland Security. And that is there in the District of Maryland.
Okay, so that when they make that ruling, is that just for that district? In other words, it doesn't have any national implications.
Correct. Well, yes and no. I mean, it's for that particular district, but the cases out of California, New York, and Maryland, they're using that to have national implication.
Okay.
So you can say, hey, pursuant to that ruling, you're not allowed to use my information, and now the government has to actually go back to the District of Maryland if they want to use particular information.
Okay.
So it's a bit complicated, but they can't use information.
All right.
So if you're listening and you were worried about renewal of DACA, about information being used for enforcement purposes against you or family members, they can't do it.
Okay. What about, we've got a whole group of people standing by that are not allowed to apply.
Correct.
So do you have any stories along that line? Where are we at, or what can be done?
So if you did not previously enroll or petition for relief under the DACA program, you cannot, at the moment, file a new application.
Oh, my gosh.
And so the Casa de Maryland case just had oral arguments 3 days ago. And a ruling from that court's not anticipated for several months.
Oh, my gosh.
So we don't know what's going to happen there. A briefing is supposed to be completed in January for the Texas cases. Right now, we're just kind of waiting for a court to actually make a decision and give us some guidance as to what's going to happen with the program.
So, I mean, we're talking, from a time standpoint, we're talking 6 to 8 months.
Quite possibly.
Before even a decision at the district or court of appeals level is made.
Correct.
So all those people that are on hold, literally are on hold.
Are on hold.
Wow.
And in the meantime, we're hoping that Congress, right, the House and the Senate can figure something out. But obviously with the most recent elections, that's going to be hard. I mean, this is the hottest issue right now, Bob. I mean, it's the hottest issue. You know that. Immigration, especially with the caravan. And
right. Which can you give us a little update on the caravan? I've heard that the Mexican government got involved when they arrived in Tijuana, and they actually had buses available for them to return them to their countries that they had left because they were so disillusioned and
right. The majority of them have returned to their homes, and the bulk, I think, the great majority of the immigrants in the caravan were from Honduras. A few from Guatemala and El Salvador, I think, joined along the way. But what I understand, the most have returned home.
Oh, boy.
So, and that's, that's an unfortunate part of the current status of immigration in this country at the moment, is many people like those in the caravan came thinking that asylum would be the answer, right? That asylum would be their ticket to residency or some form of status here in the United States. And what most people don't understand is asylum is very difficult to obtain, and depending on who you speak to, but having spoken to a chief counsel for the Department of Justice in Las Vegas, 99% of those cases are rejected.
And people are totally unaware of that.
Completely. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but I'm presuming.
You had thousands of people marching north to the U.S. border, assuming that they're going to get asylum like it's just a process.
And I don't know whether the individual themselves believe that or that's what they're being told by coyotes and others that are trying to charge people for transportation from these particular countries to the border. Hard to say. Okay. But I spoke to a woman today whose sister-in-law is detained in the Laredo Detention Center in Texas from Guatemala, trying to come over. Now, unfortunately, she came with false documents, and that's another issue. And I don't know whether she was told, "Hey, come with false documents, and you're going to walk right across," or are they being told, "Come to the country and just yell asylum"? I don't know, but regardless, just coming and claiming asylum is going to now. Will it get you a hearing, and will it get you some time in the United States so that you can at least present the merits of your case? Yes, it will. But ultimately, unless you can prove that you are a protected class, that you have legitimate fear, and they all do. Let's be honest, they all have fear. I mean, but that's not enough. They have to be maybe a family member of a politician or a religious leader or a number of things that they have to prove to gain asylum.
Okay.
So it's very difficult. I guess it's very difficult.
Okay. Let me switch gears just a little bit. In today's paper, it says immigration raids targeting employees. And it said worker arrests by ICE has increased 812% in the last fiscal years, which ended September 30th. And just go along with that, they said that the audits were conducted. There was 5,981 audits. Criminal charges filed in 779 cases. So these are the people that had gained asylum? Can we make that assumption?
Probably not.
Okay, so they're just...
They probably have not gained asylum.
Got through, and what's happening is ICE is going in and going to the employers and saying, we have been notified or we're aware of, you have workers that are working for your company that are illegal aliens, and we're going to take action.
Yeah, so more than likely, those employees of those particular companies have not gained asylum. Asylum will grant you status, meaning when you come in without a visa, okay, then you're seeking a change of status. Because if you come in without a visa and you come in illegally, you have no status.
Okay.
So then to gain status, you have to file a particular petition, okay, that would change that status to say, I'm here legally, and this is why. Whether via asylum, whether via you marry a U.S. citizen, whether you're a victim of a crime. So your visa has to have some claim for relief. Okay. Some status that's giving you the ability to stay in the United States. It may not grant you permanent residency, but it'll give you a green card under various reasons. Okay. So these employees more than likely don't have any status. More than likely they're here illegally and they're working. They don't have a work permit. They don't have a social security number. And so the number of audits that have increased obviously are, in my opinion, a directive from the Department of Justice saying, look, we got to and President Trump and saying we're going to increase these audits and increase, we're going to do a little better job inspecting on the people that may not, or may not have a work permit, and if they don't, start and put them in proceedings.
And the justification for that is national security.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so you'd have a number of Americans, that, to be quite candid with you, a number of Americans that said this is exactly what we're all about. We don't want illegal aliens in here.
That's
taking jobs away. They're, you've heard all the scenarios.
Two sides of the aisle is that, we have, depending on who you talk to, that's the reason why. And then are these good people that are working? That there strikes some of the debate as well. If they're working, and a lot of them are working under false documents, meaning they're working with either a fake Social Security number or a Social Security number that belongs to somebody else. One argument is, well, they're putting back into the system. They are paying taxes because oftentimes they're filing tax returns.
Interesting.
So, is it helping or is it hurting? Are they taking away? Or are they actually putting in? Because if they're paying taxes, but they don't have any status, and so they're not receiving any sort of other benefits, Medicaid or state benefits, and some do. But if they're not, then that's, one of the arguments is, well, hey, they're actually helping our economy. They're actually doing a lot of good. So I get both sides of the arguments, and they're not easy issues.
Okay. I've got something else here about new rules put green cards at risk, and it said a legal the individual that they have here is in Panama City, Florida. He said he was a legal U.S. resident who entered the U.S. in 1997 on a Fulbright scholarship, did not request assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, as many of his neighbors did. And so what happened was he's trying to finalize his asylum application to become a legal permanent resident, and he's worried that accepting any kind of government assistance will jeopardize his petitions in light of the new rules being proposed by the Trump administration. And it says the new public charge rules would limit the amount of federal assistance immigrants can receive if they want to permanently settle in the United States. But the complicated rules have caused widespread confusion about what kind of benefits, if any, immigrants can accept. I threw that one. This is a curve at you.
No, you're fine. So one thing that I think maybe a lot of people aren't aware of is when you file a petition for a change of status, you have to file an affidavit regarding your income. Okay? And you also have to have sponsors that in the event your income is lower or you don't have any income, that someone's going to be responsible, in quotation marks, right, for that petitioner.
Okay.
And the reason why is the government doesn't want to grant a change of status to an individual that's going to come into this country and then be a drain on his resources, right?
Got it.
So that's not really a new rule where the administration wants less illegal aliens or permanent residency card holders taking less benefits from the government. It's always been that way. It's always been that you have to have somebody that's willing to step up and be responsible for you as a petitioner in the event you can't care for yourself.
Okay.
And so, although I think that's very frustrating for many, many people that are seeking and need government assistance, it's not a new thing. And I think what's happening is they're trying to just pinch them a little bit more, right? They're trying to make it even a little more difficult. And I think, again, that's President Trump's response to saying, hey, I'm going to crack down on immigration. I'm going to make this more difficult. And again, depending on who you're talking to, some are all for it, and some say, why?
Yeah.
This is the land of...
Well, the example I gave you from Panama City, Florida, he came in on a Fulbright scholarship.
Right.
So we're not talking.
A very capable individual.
Absolutely. And he's gone through the candidacy, and he was selected.
Right.
To be part of that program.
And someone that you would believe that we want to here in our country, and someone that we would want to fill our communities with.
Absolutely. Came in 11 years ago.
Right.
Now he's very, very nervous, and he's afraid what's going to happen.
Right.
He's not going to gain that.
Well, with good reason. And there's a lot of fear because we just don't know. Right. We just don't know what's going to happen with DACA. We don't know what's going to happen with immigration reform. I mean, you can argue that President Obama won the ticket, screaming from the rooftops, immigration reform.
Right.
And he had numerous opportunities. Of course, nothing in Washington is as easy as we think it should be. But 8 years and no immigration reform. And so the hope of immigration reform now under President Trump, again, whether you are for it or whether you're against it, and where you stand on those issues, I just don't know if it's going to happen.
What is encouraging, although I don't think there'll be movement either, what's encouraging that you have both sides saying yes, there's a lot of holes, a lot of revisions that need to be made for immigration to make it effective and move forward, and their own party, their own ideologies, but. Both sides have said there's some things that need to be cleaned up.
Yeah, and I think you have to give President Trump some credit, right? It's really easy because the way that and the manner in which he goes about his business.
That's right.
Is subject to much critique. But you have to give him some credit. I think he recognizes that there is a major problem, and I think he is at least opened the door for the conversation to be had. Now, the way he's opened that door makes many believe that it's not really a welcome. Hey, step on in. It's hey, the door's open, but get the hell out. What are you doing here?
That's right.
You're not welcome in this house. So, I don't know, but at least I think it's open, and I'm hoping that our Congress can really get together and do something, because we do, like this individual in Florida, there's a lot of great people here that offer a lot of great things to our communities, and that's why it's made this country so great.
Well, you think back of all of us are immigrants.
Absolutely. I was just
somebody opened the door for us.
I was just in Holland. I was at an event, speaking at an event in Holland, and I addressed the crowd I was speaking to saying, my ancestors came from this country. And so I'm a descendant of a
mine's English and Irish. So
yes.
There you go. Yeah.
So I get the issues, but we have to do something because it's a major
and it needs to be cleaned up.
Absolutely.
One couple of really quick things. One is on the border wall itself. It's a do or die situation, according to the president. He's really holding it to the government shutdown here sometime during the holidays, upcoming holidays. Do you really believe that the wall is an effective deterrent to illegal aliens entering the United States?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to hear your opinion.
No, it just
and another.
Will it reduce the numbers of those that are coming in illegally? Maybe.
Yeah.
But they have so many ways. There's just. Without saying, I have talked to many, many individuals that have come over, and many of them have come in different ways, and so there's so many different ways. It's just, and the lengths that they go through to get here and to come is,
it's remarkable. But it's not just here. We talked about this in the last time you were with us about internationally and the Middle East and getting into Europe and things of that sort. So all the major countries, the developed countries, are really facing this immigration pressure because of the countries that they're coming from and the terrible situations that they're leaving their homelands and trying to get to at least be secure and moving forward with their lives and the lives of their children.
Absolutely.
Their families.
Yeah.
hate to say this to you. I told you this time would fly by.
You're right. It feels like it's been 2 minutes.
I double checked my high sign. It's for real. So again, we're going to have to get back together probably the end of the first quarter of 2019 and how things are moving forward.
I look forward to it, and
hopefully we
have some decisions from these courts.
I know. I would hope that we would have that by then, but you said even with the Maryland situation, some are using that decision for making their own decisions, but we need something more definitive. Maybe the Supreme Court may be giving it a second look as far as putting it on their agenda or their docket coming up. So,
oh, yeah.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Tips, and we've fortunately have Tyler Todd, the immigration attorney here locally for us, that's given us some excellent information about immigration, brought us up to speed on DACA and what's in the courts as to what's being reviewed. The situation has not been resolved. There's a long way to go, but like I've said, I've had hope that Mr. Todd will come back with us here in about 90 days, and we'll get an update again. I appreciate your time, and enjoy the holiday break.
Happy to. Likewise.
Right.
Happy holidays to you as well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes Tips for this week. You can listen to us at 3 p.m. on Fridays and rebroadcast at 5 p.m. now on Saturdays on KDXI 100.3. And also pick us up anytime, 24 hours, 7 days a week on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and believe it or not, you can even ask Alexis to go to Radio St. George Tips and ask for immigration, and I'm sure that Alexis will answer for you. Believe it or not, that's happening. So we'll see you or hear from you, and you'll hear from us in about a week's time. In the meantime, please have a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And this is Bob Oxley for Tips and signing off.